Baholi Batlonishwa, I now have the honor of calling the President of the Inkatha Freedom Party, the Honorable Velenkosini Hlabisa. He's also the leader of the official opposition and the KZN legislature. He's the chairperson of the Mangosuthu Buthelezi Foundation. Bulawayo.
Ibambene mabo twenkatha, ibambene siye, ibambene mabo twenkatha, ibambene siye pambi. Amakwala ayale siya pambi. Amakwala ayale siya pambi. Ibambene mabochenka. Ibambene Amanda!
Viva Shenge, viva! Long live the spirits of Umntwana waPhindangene, long live! Long live the spirit of Umntwana waPhindangene, long live! Abaphathi bohlelo, abantwana bomntwana waPhindangene, umntwana uphumzile, umntwana untuthuko yezwe, umntwana usibuyiselwe, nabo bonke abazukulu bomntwana waPhindangene abakhona phakathi kwethu. Sisakubingelela sonke isizwe sakwaButhelezi, abantwana basendlunkulu abakhona phakathi kwethu, amazinyane esilo akhona phakathi kwethu, abaholi bethu bonke abethuliwe phakathi kwethu ngokwehlukana kwezigaba zabo, amakhosi asendlunkulu, izinduna zamakhosi, ibutho lesilo elikhona phakathi kwethu, bonke abaholi abamele amaqembu ahlukeneyo ezombusazwe abakhona phakathi kwethu. Fellow mourners, please allow me on behalf of the IFP to reflect on the life of His Excellency, the Prince of waPhindangene, the founder and President Emeritus of the IFP. Thank you for joining us this afternoon as we gather to reflect on the exceptional life of a truly great man, a man whom we all loved and greatly admired. Umntwana waPhindangene, the founder of the IFP and the President Emeritus, the traditional Prime Minister to the Zulu monarch and nation, and the Inkosi of the Buthelezi clan. I would like to express our deepest condolences once again to Shenge's family on this devastating loss. We mourn with you, Boshenge, and carry you in our prayers. Your tears are our tears. Your grief is our grief. May you find comfort in the knowledge that Umntwana is now at rest with his heavenly Father. I would also like to thank the nation of South Africa who consistently prayed for the Prince of Wapindangene while he was in hospital and continued to pray as well as sending messages of condolences after this sad news of his passing. Your prayers and words of encouragement and support have been a great consolation to the Buthelezi family as well as the IFP. As the leader of the party that Umntwana founded, nurtured, and raised into a political force to be reckoned with, I believe I can speak on behalf of each and every IFP member when I say that there will never again be a leader like Umntwana Wapindangene. The loss of Prince Buthelezi has left a gaping vacuum in the IFP, in the Zulu Kingdom, and in the South African political landscape. Most, if not all, of us here today have never had to live in a world without Usheng. I believe that while he left the world a better place, there is still much work we can continue with in his name in order to honor his life, his sacrifices, and his legacy. Umntwana Wapindangene was many things to many people. He had the unique ability to excel at everything he puts his hands to. The Prince of Wapindangene was a true mentor. While I was at a primary school, I benefited from the Good Citizenship Program, which taught learners about self-help and self-reliance and self-service to one's community and country. This program was incorporated into the school curriculum by the KwaZulu government under the leadership of the then Chief Minister, the Prince of Wapindangene. These teachings resonated with many of us and motivated us to join the National Cultural Liberation Movement, which was also called Inkatha Yenkululeko Yesizwe. In the 45 years that followed, I and many of our leaders have had a privilege of learning under the Master's wing, which led many of us to various leadership positions within the IFP, as well as a life dedicated to service. Umntwana Wapindangene, even after stepping down as the president of the IFP, he continued to make his presence felt when circumstances demanded it, such as during the July 2021 unrest, when he was of the very few political leaders who was out on the streets of his community in Ulundi, supporting residents and calling for calm. He was also the first to call on the president of our country to deploy the SANDF to save our economy. Unfortunately, his call was not acceded to immediately. We will forever be grateful for the opportunity to have worked beside Umntwana Wawaphindangene in the service of our people. He was a great influence in our lives, a man of the highest integrity, who was never afraid to speak his mind and stand up for the rights of the people. Throughout his life, Umntwana's faith in Christ guided all his principles and was the cornerstone of his commitment to peace, service, and sacrifice. As we gather here today and reflect on the life of Umntwana Waphindangene, I believe that we can all draw a measure of comfort in the knowledge that Shenge has run his race and has now gone to join his Heavenly Father and receive his reward. His was a race well run, a life in which Umntwana Waphindangene dedicated more than 7 decades to public service while remaining a devoted family man. We are honored to have the Buthelezi family with us here today. Bantwana bomntwana Waphindangene, pardon us for having deprived you the good times with your father and your grandfather. Over the years, there was never any doubt that despite his punishing schedule and many party and political commitments, Umntwana always made time for his family. He was a family man. We saw him, a father figure, a man of faith. I can also speak with conviction when I say that His Excellency's 3 surviving children, Princess Phumzile Buthelezi, Princess Sibuyiselo Buthelezi, and Prince Tutukoyezwe Buthelezi, and all the grandchildren were all blessed to have a close relationship with their father and granddaughters. In particular, Prince Zuzifa, on behalf of all of us, I want to thank you. During the last days of Umntwana, when life was hard for him to execute things alone, you were always on the side of His Excellency. We knew you no longer had your diary. While His Excellency was in hospital, everything stopped in your life to become a support structure to His Excellency. May you, Shenge, and all your siblings and the granddaughters of His Excellency, may God bless you for having been a support structure to His Excellency. While I am sure that your grief runs deep, I hope that you will draw comfort from the warm and loving relationship that you shared as a family and the many precious memories you made over the years, such as family tradition, of morning and evening prayers which spanned decades. Umntwana wakwaPhindangene was also a much loved and respected traditional leader. Not only he was the traditional prime minister to the Zulu monarch and the king, a role he diligently and honestly fulfilled with distinction over 7 decades. In the service of the 3 kings, but Umntwana also remained as Inkosi of Buthelezi clan. Umntwana waPhindangene was born into the royal family as the son of Princess Makoko Newzroom, King Solomon's sister, and Inkosi Mathole Buthelezi, the king's prime minister. At the age of 14, Umntwana lost his father and was recognized as his heir and successor. In 1957, at the age of 29, he was installed as Inkosi of the Buthelezi clan, a position he held for the rest of his life. Prince Buthelezi waged a lifelong battle to protect the institution of the monarchy and traditional leadership, as Inkosi yaseMadungeni has confessed in front of us. This included forcing the Parliament to reconvene for 1 day before 1994 elections to insert the recognition of the Zulu monarch into the Constitution. For his dedication, Umntwana waPhindangene received both the King's Cross Award and the King Shaka Gold Medal from His Majesty the late King Goodwill Zwelithini Kabhekuzulu. After the passing of His Majesty King Goodwill Zwelithini, after the passing of His Majesty King Goodwill Zwelithini Kabhekuzulu, Umntwana waPhindangene played a crucial role in ensuring that his heir, then Prince Misuzulu Sinqobile kaZwelithini, ascended the throne despite opposition that existed. We will always honor Umntwana for a smooth process he led after the demise of the late king, for the new king to be in the throne. His Majesty King Misuzulu Sinqobile kaZwelithini was one of the many prominent South Africans who expressed their deep sadness at the loss of His Excellency, sharing that he wrote, open quote, "I lament with the entire nation during this difficult period," said King Misuzulu kaZwelithini. The king further praised Umntwana by saying, open quote, "Prince Buthelezi served the crown diligently for more than 7 decades, and as Inkosi of the Buthelezi clan for many years. His absence will be felt by all of us who have benefited and learned a lot from the Prince of Wapindangene's leadership abilities," close quote. Umntwana will be remembered by history as an activist, working to liberate his people and his country from the shackles of oppression. The seeds of activism were planted while Prince Buthelezi was a young man, first as he assisted his uncle and founder of the ANC, Dr. Prixley Isaka with correspondence while Umntwana was completing his matric. Then, while studying at Fort Hare University, where he joined the ANC Youth League. After Umntwana completed his legal studies and began working as a clerk, he began attending political rallies and was mentored by Inkosi Albert Lutuli and formed close bonds with prominent leaders like Oliver Tambo, Walter Sisulu, and Nelson Mandela. It was on the instruction of Inkosi Lutuli and Oliver Tambo, who believed that Shenge could undermine the apartheid system from within, that he took up the leadership of the Zulu Territorial Authority, which later he became the Chief Minister of KwaZulu. In 1971, the Prince of Wapindangene received praise for his efforts from the ANC's external mission, with Oliver Tambo announcing that, I quote, "The enemy's own creation, the Zulu Bantustan, have become a battleground for freedom," close quote. We said, the enemy's own creation, the Zulu Bantustan, have become a background of battlefield for freedom, where the true representatives of the people are fighting the racist and rejecting their regime, close quote, said Oliver Tambo, referring to Umntwana kaPhindangene. Throughout his life, there were certain things that never changed, and Shenge's heart for the people and his desire to represent them and fight for their rights was one of these things that never changed. The leadership of the ANC and the leaders of the frontline states knew his heart was for the people. That is why in 1974, following the banning of the ANC, PAC and other political organizations on the advice of President Kenneth Kaunda and with the support of Oliver Tambo, Umntwana kaPhindangene was advised to form the membership-based organization to reignite political mobilization within the borders of South Africa, while all other leaders were in prison or in exile. In the struggle for freedom and the advancement of black South Africans, the Prince of Wapindangene held more rallies under the banner Free Mandela than any other leader in South Africa. He also made use of his unique position within the apartheid system to fight for the rights of the black South Africans. When he was offered nominal independence of KwaZulu by the apartheid government, he rejected the offer thereby retaining citizenship for millions of black South Africans. Amongst other things, he used his position of influence as Chief Minister of KwaZulu to champion education and build more than 6,000 classrooms, built the Mangosuthu University of Technology, and developed the University of KwaZulu-Natal, of Zululand, when he was a Chancellor of the University of Zululand. This is what demonstrated him as a champion of education under the slogan, Education for Liberation. Umntwana wakwaPhindangene also championed local economic development and black business people through the establishment of the KwaZulu Finance and Investment Corporation, which opened Itala Bank and provided financial services to those who were barred from accessing loans, especially the black people. The Prince of Wapindangene became the lone voice within South Africa that was openly calling for the release of Nelson Mandela and other political prisoners, as well as the unbanning of all political organizations who were forced to operate in exile. However, despite all his efforts in support of the ANC's mission in exile, when Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi refused to embrace the armed struggle and international sanctions and investment and disinvestments, he was vilified by the ANC. Inkatha found itself a target of the ANC's People's War, in which some 20,000 lives were lost on black violence. During this time, and despite the impossible situation he found himself in, Umntwana waPhindangene showed himself to be a man of integrity, who never wavered from the founding principles of the IFP and its commitment to non-violence, negotiations, unity, inclusivity, and non-racialism. When South Africa finally broke free from the shackles of apartheid and oppression, leaders on both sides of the divide acknowledged the role Umntwana waPhindangene played for the freedom we achieved in 1994. Mr. F.W. de Klerk, the last president under the minority government, mentioned Umntwana waPhindangene by name when speaking about his decision to release Nelson Mandela from prison. When Madiba was released, Madiba too spoke of the contribution made by the Prince of Wapindangene in ensuring that he and other political prisoners were set free, and that political organizations operating from exile were unbanned and allowed to come back home. Madiba himself described Prince of Wapindangene as, open quote, a freedom fighter in his own right, close quote. There can be no doubt that Umntwana waPhindangene was a true patriot who fought for the rights and freedom of our people in South Africa. As someone who lived through this time, we will always be grateful that Umntwana did not forsake his values and principles and did not abandon the people of South Africa. When the political parties were unbanned in 1990, Inkatha Inkululeko Yesizwe became Inkatha Freedom Party. Umntwana was unanimously elected as the president of the party. He continued his role until 2019, where he stepped down and handed over the baton to the new leadership, which is leading the party as we speak. It is largely thanks to Shenge for the legacy he created for our country and also for the IFP even to this date as we speak in this memorial service. The IFP is a party that says to people, trust us, and the people say yes. They have given us their support because they trusted the Prince of Kwapindangene for his leadership and his legacy. Umntwana has an unblemished track record of good governance. Never during his many decades of service has there ever been a whisper of scandal or corruption under his rule. He was the man that led with transparency and accountability and who was never found wanting. Even after he stepped down as the IFP president in 2019, Shenge did not slow down or rest. He remained actively involved with and committed to the party that he founded and loved so dearly. His legacy as a politician speaks of a man who always put people first and was not afraid to speak up and challenge authority when the need arose. He was a member of the first democratic parliament and served faithfully in his capacity as an MP for 29 years, leading the IFP's caucus from his own party, and was often the voice of reason when tension ran high in the House, in the National Assembly. Umntwana was also an exceptional orator who spoke with confidence and genuinely connected with his audience simply because he genuinely cared. During the 29 years that Shenge led the IFP in the National Assembly, the party took on the role of a constructive opposition that did not oppose merely for the sake of opposing. Where the ruling party put legislation on the table that will benefit the people of South Africa, the IFP will support it. However, when the ruling party stepped outside the lines, the IFP was never afraid to speak up. There are no words to express how much Shenge will be missed. His passing means the end of an unforgettable chapter in the life of the IFP. But in order to honor his legacy and what he has built, we need to go on and preserve his legacy as we begin a new chapter without him in our lives. His legacy will be the pillar of the IFP's next chapter, and I am confident that the constant guidance he provided to us as a collective will ensure that the IFP will continue in its upward trajectory. As we gather here today, we thank Umntwana for all the contributions, counseling, and guidance he provided to us as his followers over the many years since the inception of the IFP. We will uphold the principles of servant leadership and self-help and self-reliance as we work together to build the South Africa of Shenge's dream, a just, prosperous, moral society whose citizens engage with each other on the basis of Ubuntu Botho. The Prince of Wapindangene was a champion of South Africa. He was also a truly great statesman and a credit to our country. Indeed, Umntwana was an international icon. Alongside the great leaders of Africa, there are few people in the world who have ever served their country for over 7 decades, as Umntwana did. During this time, he was welcomed and worked with leaders throughout Africa, including Haile Selassie, President Julius Nyerere, President Kenneth Kaunda, and President Olusegun Obasanjo. He counted them as friends. In recognition of his service in Africa, Shenge was awarded the Knight Commander of the Star of Africa by Liberia's President Tolbert, as well as the French National Order of Merit from President Giscard d'Estaing for the distinguished service Umntwana rendered to the people of South Africa. Umntwana as an international icon, he was received at the White House by the U.S. Presidents Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, and George Bush. The United Kingdom Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher personally visited Umntwana at Ulundi and also hosted Umntwana in the United Kingdom. Today, the world weeps for the giant tree that has fallen. If one asks ordinary South Africans, they will tell you that Umntwana was a good man, a humanitarian. I was struck by many of the tributes that have been pouring in over the past few days, with people referring to Umntwana as a true people's leader. Many refer to him a father, a grandfather, a giant, a national builder, the formidable survivor, the man you can trust, and the servant of the people. There was a young woman who spoke about the good things that Shenge has done, particularly for the rural communities. She spoke of Shenge's contributions in reforming the traditional courts and delivering justice to people in their communities. Members of his community shared that he was always just a phone call or a walk away from the Buthelezi clan, despite his heavy schedule. Umntwana was an early adapter when it comes to the preservation of our country and the world's natural resources. He described himself as having been a conversationist all his life. He supported rhino conservation and initiatives to save the oceans. And under his leadership, the IFP spoke out about the impact of shark nets on the ocean and the horrors of captive lion hunting. He was a patron of the Rhino and Elephant Foundation, the Wildland Conservation Trust, and the Mabula Ground Home Bill project. It is impossible to cover the depth and breadth of the life of His Excellency and his legacy in its entirety, but today is just a beginning. His legacy, his wisdom, and many lessons we can draw from his exceptional life will never be forgotten. I can confidently assure you of this. As the President of the IFP, we will remain true to Umntwana's example of servant leadership and the values and principles he espoused. I also make this commitment as the chairperson of the Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi Foundation, which was launched last year and exists to preserve the legacy of Umntwana waPhindangene in its diverse entirety. Emulating his life philosophy and principles, the foundation will work towards creating a better South Africa, Africa, and the world at large. Egameni lethu sonke, uma sikhumbula umntwana waPhindangene, iqhawe lase-Afrika, sithi ubuyinqanawe Shenge, ingcwele uma kade bona. Namuhla sididilikile intaba enkulu eningizimu neAfrika. Uhambe kahle Sondiya. Uhambe kahle silwane sinamandla kwehleleni. Sithi ndlela nhle mabhanga walingana nabafokazana. Hamba kahle mbabazane kamahaka. Uyibekile induku ebandla. IsiZulu sithi ziyohamba insizwa kuyosala ibonga. Phumula kahle Sondiya. Sizowumela umsebenzi owushiye emahlombe ethu. Isifiso sakho ngezwe lakithi osishiye singakafezeki sizosilwela kuze kube siyafezeka. Iqembu lakho lizokhula libe ngangeyintaba lidle inketho ekugcineni liphathe izwe lakithi. I therefore conclude by saying, in the midst of our shared grief, we take this opportunity to give thanks for Shenge's life. Let each of us live here today with a renewed commitment to honoring the legacy of the Prince of Wapindangene in our own lives. Let us be people of integrity, peacemakers, dedicated to serving others, to the pursuit of the freedom for all. May Umntwana's legacy light the way to the future of South Africa and the world. Thank you, Program Director.